Welcome to the Give It a Nudge podcast. Thanks for joining us. Each week, you're going to hear stories from founders, VCs, and private equity leaders from across the industry. We hope that these stories are going to give you insights to help you on your journey, and we'd love you to be part of our community. So please hit that subscribe button, and let's get on with the show. Welcome to Give It a Nudge. This week we have got actually a good friend of mine and a client of Nudge, Tim Veron from Vively. Very exciting. It's always good to have people on that I know because I rarely do. So when we first started the show, you'd remember we did a lot of guests that I knew, and then sort of the last, 60 or 80, I've not met them at all. So it's great to have Tim on. This is actually his new business, so I actually don't know too much about it. So I'm looking forward to learning about that. So welcome to the show, and Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Steve.
Pleasure. Now, I've known you through Cub, the club that we're both a member of, and I don't think you were doing Vively at that time, or you were just starting it. And we have talked a little bit about it because you've been working with us, but you've been working with the team rather than me. So why don't you give us a quick overview of what Vively is and how long you've been going and where it came from?
Yeah, sure. So, so I'm one of the co-founders of Vively. We're a metabolic health company that helps people understand how their diet and lifestyle is affecting their health through things like real-time continuous glucose monitoring and other wearables tracking as well. So,
cool.
Interesting.
So, metabolic health. So my understanding of metabolic, and I actually have quite a good understanding because what you may not know is, have you ever heard of Graves' disease?
Not too familiar with it. I
had it a few years back, and it's where your metabolic rate runs about 80 times faster than it should, which means you can eat a lot.
Yep.
It's a bit more scientific than that, but that's what I took out of it. But why don't you explain, maybe in a little bit more detail for people that are watching the show, what is metabolic health?
Yeah, sure. So I might take a step back and I like to talk about it through the lens of continuous glucose monitoring, which is sort of a key part of our product at the moment. So a continuous glucose monitor is a small device that usually sits on the back of your arm, and it sits just beneath your skin and measures the glucose in the fluid between your cells.
Is this like a diabetic thing? Is that where you do it?
So it has been used in diabetes for the past few years, but we're actually bringing it to a broader group of people in more of a prevention setting.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so a continuous glucose monitor, a small sensor, sits around, measures your glucose levels in real time. And what that allows you to do is basically get a finger on the pulse of your metabolic functioning.
Okay.
So your metabolic functioning is basically your body's ability to regulate glucose, but also, to convert inputs like your food into energy and fuel for your body.
Yep.
So by measuring your glucose in real time, you're basically putting a finger on the pulse of your metabolic health system.
Cool. And so this is very much along the lines of preventative health as opposed to treating of health, right? Which is the way that we should be really living.
That's right. I think, we don't like to use the word prevention because there's a bit of cognitive dissonance there with preventing something that might occur in 10, 20, 30 years time. And health is more than just, the absence of disease. So it's about, building health, growing health. And so the way that we like to talk about it is more in terms of wellness.
Yep.
And so, when we approach things, it is very much around making the data actionable, helping people achieve their short-term goals, whether it might be, losing weight, increasing their energy or reducing fatigue throughout the day, or just improving things like their diet, their sleep, their exercise. And so by taking that approach, it is helping them to prevent lifestyle-based disease such as type 2 diabetes or metabolic syndrome or obesity. But it's something a little bit more tangible.
Okay, cool. Now, before we go too heavily into the business and where you're at and where you're going, let's get some backstory. So obviously you weren't doing this when I met you. You've done some fascinating things. So as an entrepreneur, you've been an entrepreneur before. Why don't we talk about sort of what made you become an entrepreneur? Because it's different for everybody, I find, and some of your previous businesses, because you've done some really interesting things.
Yeah, I think I've always been obsessed with entrepreneurship and health, right? So I think I've always been drawn to health technology. And I've been investing in and operating digital health platforms for the last few years. I actually first sort of was exposed to the space through a local VC firm called Right Click Capital, where health was a part of our investment mandate. But then in early 2020, my now co-founder and I, Michael, we acquired a company called Natural Therapy Pages.
Which I've heard of. Oh, because you used to run it, that's why.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And still do run it.
Yep.
And so Natural Therapy Pages is sort of the largest yellow pages of the allied and complementary health services sector in Australia. So you've got thousands of nutritionists, naturopaths, chiros, physios, psychologists that advertise on the platform and pay a subscription fee.
Cool.
So Michael and I took over that business just as COVID hit. And I actually think acquiring a company is one of the fastest ways to cut your teeth as a founder. Yeah. It is quite interesting, quite challenging.
Confronting?
Quite confronting. In this scenario, we were acquiring a company that had a couple of $1 million in revenue, but was losing $1 million a year.
Awesome.
So our job immediately, as Michael and I not having huge amounts of capital at our disposure, we had to really quickly figure out how to make the business work.
So before we get on to how, what makes you acquire a business that's turning over 2 million and losing $1 million? What makes you go, oh, goodbye? What? Good
question. Good question. I think it was a combination of things. I think Michael and I were itching to get operational, and to have our own business, but also both of us really obsessed with health. And we analysed the opportunity and we did our due diligence, and we realised if we change X, Y, and Z, the business would be profitable.
Right. So you had a very clear plan of how to.
We had a very clear plan.
And I guess this strong influence of health in your life, where did that come from?
I think it probably comes from my family. We're a very sporty family. We always have been. And so, from a very young age, was doing a whole range of different sports and was always thinking about training and being the best at those sports. So I think that mindset from an early age probably distilled from my father.
Yeah, well, that's good, because we try and do that with our children. We're trying to instill this training mindset now.
That's right.
Before they've got any choice in their life, so that it's their life. So it's good to know it works. All right, so you came in, you bought the business. Why were they selling it? So I guess the operators that they just couldn't see a way out, and you could see a way out. So you come in, you take it over, you execute that plan. How long did it take to turn it around in what is arguably a difficult time, I would imagine, for that sector, because a lot of those health providers would be face-to-face providers as opposed to online providers.
That's right. That's right. So the company was owned by a larger business called hipages. And basically they weren't focusing on this business. And so they wanted to divest all of their non-core assets. And so that was the reason why they let go of it. But yeah, it was a very difficult time, because in the allied and complementary health services sector, very much face-to-face consults was sort of the primary way of engaging with clients. And there was a real sort of hesitancy to adopt digital technologies through their clinics. And so that was a real challenge. But, Michael and I were able to restructure the team and get the business into a profitable state within a few months of taking over the business. So, yeah.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the name. Was it called that before? The Vively, where's it come from? It's usually something in your life before that these names come from. I'm always fascinated by names.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We actually acquired this name as part of acquiring Natural Therapy Pages.
Oh, really?
So there was a whole bunch of domain names that we got as part of that. And, when we were thinking about starting Vively, we were trying to come up with different names, and
isn't that hard? It's so hard.
It's really hard.
I don't think anyone realizes how hard that is.
And we saw this domain vively.com and .com.au, and we thought, that's interesting. And so we looked into the history of it, and Vively, it's actually a word. It's an old word. It's been sort of removed from the dictionary.
So it's a real word.
So it used to be a real word, and it meant two things: from a clear point of view, and then to be full of life.
Why would they remove that? Sounds like a
I'm not
good
sure.
word.
It's a great word.
It sounds like an awesome word.
Yeah. So we're bringing it back. We're bringing it back from the dead.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's how the name came about.
Okay. So after you'd bought the therapeutic business, you're going through COVID. what makes you start this business? How does that journey sort of come? Because you've got your hands full trying to, turn this business around. It's great, fantastic, you're profitable, you're in an unusual time, to say the least.
Yeah.
One thing, I know, let's add a little bit more pressure to our lives. Let's start another business. At least we got the name done.
Yeah.
What brought that about and drove that? And is that your main focus now? Is the other business kind of running itself, or?
Yeah, the other business is now running itself. So Vively is very much the focus. I think for Michael and I, we always wanted to solve a big problem in the health space, and we knew natural therapy pages wasn't going to be the way to do that. Yep. We knew it was a great entry point into the space as operators, and so through the process of turning natural therapy pages around, obviously getting to understand the industry and a lot of the problems in the industry. One of the things that really stood out to us was chronic disease, and more specifically like lifestyle-driven chronic disease. So type 2 diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndrome. The biggest health crisis of our time is lifestyle disease. And so we looked at this and we realized that the healthcare system, does a great job at lots of things, primarily treating acute conditions, but it hasn't been designed for disease that manifests over years and years and years, if not decades, and it's driven by our daily choices and behaviors and and diet. So we thought, well, how do we solve this problem? And we came to the conclusion that we needed to create a new brand and a new company that had to go direct to the consumer to empower them. To take their health into their own hands and to improve their health and prevent and reverse lifestyle disease.
Okay, let's talk about this, because I've done a little bit of research into this, not because of you coming on the show, just because I've been interested. My understanding of chronic disease, as they call it, is that it's pretty much all preventable, like nearly all of it. Like if we changed our lifestyle, we could completely remove it from the planet almost. Now, in my readings and listening to a variety of podcasts where there's always varying opinions, things like dairy we shouldn't be having because we were never designed to have it. Obviously, gluten's not great. Everyone knows that, but gluten-free is nice, but that's another thing we can come to later. Although I'm getting better. So there's all these rules, right? And it seems to me like really a lot of what we're eating, there's the argument obviously around meat. We've all seen that pro athlete documentary on Netflix, which is very one-sided, but there's all these different topics. In your understanding, is it that you can do it all, but you got to do it in moderation? Or some of them, is dairy really a bad thing for us? Or what have you discovered in your journey on this?
Yeah, it's really interesting
because there's a lot of info.
There's a lot of information out there, and I think we don't prescribe a specific diet as part of Vively.
I understand that you're monitoring to make better choices.
It's all about helping people understand their own data so they can make their own decisions about what to eat and what not to eat. We just give the guidance in terms of where this is metabolically healthy for you to be within.
Yep.
And so, what I've realized is that there's actually not many rules. It's different for everyone, but I think, the obvious ones are processed foods are definitely not good for us.
Yep. I think everyone can agree on that.
Everyone agree on that.
Except for Coles and Woolies.
That's right. And I think, there's also foods that are high in sugar and then foods that are high in salt.
Yep.
I think other than that, it depends on the individual. So I think that's what I've learned. Yeah.
Okay. So your device, and I'm likening this. So I used to have a Whoop band, which I'm sure you're aware of because I see you've got an Aura ring on.
Yeah.
So my Whoop band, which I wore for 2 years, taught me a hell of a lot about myself, and it taught me how. And I got it at the same time as about 4 friends. And if we did exactly the same thing, the data was so different, which I found fascinating. I knew everybody was different. I didn't realize how much, how much sleep some people need, how much exercise. It's fascinating, right? And it teaches you so much about yourself. So I'm guessing that's what your device is doing.
Yeah.
So where does it go? Have you got one on?
I don't have one on at the moment.
So do you wear it, or is it surgically inserted? I'm really
It's not surgically.
Can you get one there? Because that would be so much easier.
I actually think you can. You can. There's one that's approved in the FDA.
We need to get yours done. Forget the rest.
That's right. But yeah, so this sensor, it's a really small sensor. It's about 20 cent size. Sits on the back of your arm.
It's a stick on.
And there's a tiny, tiny little filament. It's minuscule.
Yep.
It's basically like an acupuncture needle.
Yep. Okay.
And so it sits just below the skin. When you put it on, you can't feel it. It's completely painless.
Yep.
and it sits just below the skin and monitors your blood sugar levels.
How secure is it? So, for example, if I'm doing a sport, is it going to stay on?
Depends what sport you're doing.
Obviously, not anything that involves that.
Wrestling? Or
no wrestling. I know I look like a wrestler. I've had that comment a few times.
Yeah.
I guess, let's say, water sport, for example, where you might be falling into the water at pace.
I swim with my sensor on, and it's totally fine. But if you're maybe going into the surf and there's a lot of water movement, that might cause problems.
Have you got like a band you can put over it?
We've got our own sort of custom patch that sits over the top. So that's pretty helpful for keeping it secure as well.
Okay. And then does that relay information back to an app, I'm guessing?
Yes. So that data syncs straight back into our app.
Yep.
And then we also connect with, Apple Health and Google Fit and pull all of your
the other
exercise data, sleep data into the same spot. And so what we're doing is basically adding glucose monitoring to the existing toolkit that consumers have out there for monitoring their health. But continuous glucose monitors are probably the most important tool in the toolkit because they give you a holistic understanding of your health. If you're using a continuous glucose monitor, you can see how your diet is affecting your health, how your exercise is affecting your health, how your sleep and how your stress is affecting your health in real time. There's no other wearable that provides that sort of level of holistic information.
So I took my Whoop band off, and I don't wear my Apple Watch unless I'm training because they annoy me, and I can't sleep with them. And I just, the Whoop band was fine, but after 2 years, I wasn't learning anything new. So if I was to I'll still wear my Apple Watch when I'm training, for example. But if I was to just wear your device, how much information would it be able to give me, considering I'm not wearing anything else that's continuously monitoring me?
Yeah, so you can still, within our app, you can still manually log things if you'd like. So if you don't have a wearable or a Whoop on or so forth, you can still add your own data into the app to power those insights. But I guess the core sort of information you'd be getting would be related to your diet.
Which is probably what I need more than anything, to be honest.
It's really important. Yeah.
Okay. So how long have you been going with Vively now? How long?
We're about a year old.
Okay.
But we launched the platform in August.
Yep.
So coming up onto 6 months.
Yep.
So we're really early stage, but we are growing very fast. So yeah.
How's the acquisition going? Because I know we've just hired a marketing manager for you, but how acquisition of customers, B2C, is well renowned as one of the most expensive things you can ever do in the world.
Very expensive.
So how is that going for you? What sort of different channels are you taking to do that?
Yeah, it's tough. It's really challenging. And I think particularly in this economic environment with funding, we closed our pre-seed round at the end of last year, $1.5 million. But we are very capital constrained. So I think that's really forced us to think about how can we grow really efficiently, but then also focus on the unit economics of the product. Our current objective is to get to a break-even position this year as a business. So, but our sort of main acquisition channels at the moment are through social platforms or through Google. And it is quite expensive, but it has been working for us. And over the last few months, we've gone from kind of zero to over $120,000 in monthly revenue.
That's cool.
So trending over that sort of $1.5 million ARR.
That's great.
And we're continuing to grow. But most importantly, we're sort of moving towards a positive unit economics model as well, and focusing on how do we keep customers on the platform, for many, many months, if not years.
Yeah, well, that's it. I had the Whoop band for 2 years, and then I was just like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Although it still sits in my drawer with about 25 bands that I bought.
You might pick it up again one day.
I'm actually thinking about it, having this conversation. It's making me think about it. So maybe I should subscribe to Vively. That's what I should be doing.
Yeah,
so I'm assuming it's a monthly subscription.
I'll give you a discount.
It's a monthly subscription, right?
Yeah, so we've actually got a really interesting model. So we decided not to go down the monthly subscription path and actually offer a quarterly subscription or an annual. And so what we found was that a continuous glucose monitor, it lasts for 2 weeks, right? And you would need to replace that sensor again if you wanted to measure your glucose continuously. But you actually don't need to measure your glucose continuously. You get so much information and so much data from just 2 weeks of use that you actually need a fair bit of time to kind of process that information and put some of it into practice.
To make some changes.
And then
do it again.
Then you do it again, and then you compare to your baseline and you see how you've improved.
Okay.
And then you dive a little bit deeper and understand some of the deeper nuances.
You know what I like about that model? With the root band, it no doubt changed my behavior, but it's incremental because it's daily, it's all the time, and it's constantly pinging you, right?
Yeah.
This way, it's almost kind of exciting because you're building that anticipation. You're making those changes and building the anticipation to get it back on. And you just, once it's on, it just sits there the whole time for the 2 weeks, right? You just, you don't take it off.
Yeah, that's right.
That's an interesting, I like that model.
Yeah.
I can see how that would be, for someone like me who's easily excited, I can see how that would be really exciting to put it back on again.
It really matches people's sort of motivation cycles as well. People aren't always motivated to be learning about their health.
No.
And always motivated to put to putting things in, putting effort in. So we found that the quarterly cycle really matches those levels.
Interesting.
And also it gives people a chance to sort of just, take a break from technology for a little bit, because it's not healthy to
exactly where you are right now.
Yeah,
taking a break.
That's right, taking a break.
You should get T-shirts with that written on. You should say, "I'm with Vively, but I'm taking a break."
Yeah.
Okay, so where to from here? So obviously, yes, you got to build the audience, you got to build the recurring revenue. But what about the product? Have you got thoughts on the product? Have you got other products you want to add? Where's the future of Vively now?
Yeah, really, really good question. So I think there's a lot of opportunity within the current sort of product set. So I think diving deeper into this sort of the technology that enables this behavior change and building a really solid behavior change tool. So we're focusing on that at the moment. And I think that will obviously lead to, better retention and usability of the product over time. But then we're also thinking about, well, how do we get Vively into more, as many hands as possible, really?
Or arms.
Or arms. I think we've had so many practitioners, doctors, dietitians reach out to Vively and want to offer our product as part as part of their service or in their clinic. So I think at some stage we'd like to, integrate into the healthcare system as well.
Health funds, surely health funds.
Health funds are another option.
Yeah.
Because the way that we see it is that the healthcare system has a wellness problem. So it has a lifestyle and a diet problem. It's really lacking in that area.
Yeah.
And so we believe that we can fill that gap in the healthcare system and make it really easy for practitioners, for doctors to provide lifestyle and dietary, medicine to their patients through our platform.
And so does it now give you advice in any way? Does it make suggestions? Like obviously, if you're seeing data that you don't like, but perhaps you haven't got the time to go and read what you should be doing, does it give you some sort of hints and tips and so forth as you go?
Yeah, that's right. So we interpret the data for you in real time.
That's good.
Based on obviously your glucose data, but also down to the ingredients, the specific ingredients that you've been eating and how they might be affecting your glucose levels.
Yeah.
Plus the exercise and the sleep. And so in real time, we're giving people sort of contextual education and insights and nudges and bumps.
Nudges?
Yeah, that's right. Give it a nudge.
How many people use that word when they're around me? I think it's subconscious.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so you've got this real-time feedback mechanism that helps sort of educate people in real time.
Yeah.
But then we've got a whole bunch of sort of resources to dive deeper. Plus we have an in-app dietitian support. So if you wanted that extra accountability or that extra sort of personalized nutritional therapy or advice, you've got access to that through the app as well. I want to try
this. I'm going to try this. We're going to talk about that afterwards. I'm definitely going to try this.
Good.
But two more questions.
Okay.
So one is about Vively and one's about you. So from a Vively point of view, and I know we've just been hiring for you, but I wasn't involved. But tell me in your own words, if someone does want to work for you guys, why would they want to do that? In your words, why would someone want to come and work at Vively?
I think someone would want to come and work for Vively that wants to actually have a meaningful impact on the lives of many people in Australia and around the world.
Yeah.
Every day, we feed the feedback into our Slack channel so we can check it out. And, every day we've got these incredible stories of how we've helped people, take control of their health,
it's awesome.
Help them achieve their health goals, where there were no solutions for them, whether they were offered by the healthcare system or not. And so I think, being able to work at a place where you can actually have a real impact and you can actually see that. But then also, we're only just getting started.
Yeah.
We're so early stage.
So early stage.
So joining the team now, or in the future, you're going to make a big contribution to the direction of the company, and and see that through your work.
You got to start getting some of those Slack stories onto video.
Yeah.
You got to give them a platform where
That's
they
a good
can
idea.
record something, because a montage of that would be awesome.
Yeah.
That'll be impactful.
It's a good idea.
I love video. So for you, you've obviously come on this journey. You've bought a business. You've spawned another one out of it. You're pretty much really early stage with both of them. How have you found entrepreneurship in this kind of, I guess for me, I've run businesses now for 18 years. The last 4 or 5 years have just been intense.
Yeah.
There've been highs and lows beyond anything. There's been ridiculous things happen that you never imagined. How have you found it?
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster.
That's exactly what. Yeah, that's a much more eloquent way of saying what I said.
but I mean, I love roller coasters.
Yep.
So it's it's a great time. I love it. Like there's always, every day there's a new challenge that you got to face, and a lot of them are company-ending challenges. So
how many of those do you get a week? It seems like a lot, right?
It's a lot.
Someone gave me a great term yesterday. He said, I believe, I was at a pitch VC breakfast, right, in Melbourne. I was in Melbourne yesterday. And I think it was the guy who's running it. Yeah, it was Cam, the guy who runs it, who runs his own fund. He said, in my view, all startups are 6 months away from massive success and 3 months away from closing down.
I love it. Yeah, I love it.
That's a great term.
Yeah, that rings true.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's how we all feel.
Yeah.
Well, look, thank you for coming on the show. I love what you're doing, as
Thanks,
you know. I'm blown away by how many more impactful startups there are. We had this big sort of gluten of massive SaaS platforms to do everything in business, but there's so many more purpose-led startups, and I find them super interesting, particularly ones around health.
Yeah.
And the wearable market's going nuts. And I just can't. I mean, you're very much at the forefront of it, so who knows? You will get one that's surgically inserted, I'm sure, at some stage. Let me know.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Please click the subscribe button below, and we'll see you next week.